from Brilliant introduce himself.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. I know it was a long session after lunch, and after a game, to again capture the attention of the audience and to start again is difficult, but I'll give it a try. So, we have been discussing about distributed agile, and my friend John took us through the most famous and important factor in distributed agile culture, people makes the teams, and that is what makes success. So here I'm taking the story a little further, looking at a few other aspects which also help as Indian IT teams or Indian IT service organizations. Some other factors that also help us in becoming successful distributed teams. So I work with Brilio. Brilio is a new know-how company. We call ourselves One Digital being agile. So we have a lot of focus on agile, and we are 20,000, 2,000 plus people, growing fast, and we have offices in the US, UK, Europe, and India. So it is in the ratio of 60% in India, 30% in UK, Europe, and the rest in the US. So that's about video. So, I mean, my pitch here is that Scrum or no Scrum, distributed development is not new for our Indian IT services company. So even as back as 80s or 90s, so we had the production offshoring happening in India. A lot of organizations for car manufacturing, electronic component manufacturing. A lot of offshoring did happen in India, and we were working with multiple teams and doing that. And later, 90 onwards, 1990s and all that, low-end IT services, and we all remember, right? The boom which happened was mainly the Y2K. Lot of work came to India. So we started working with multiple teams and helping many organizations address the Y2K problem. So my pitch is that it is not new for us. So what we have now come to is high-end services like AK-enabled services, BPO, product development, all of such kind of work also is being offshore. So now we are working with multiple cultures, multiple teams, multiple time zones. So how do we address all that? So basically, while all this offshoring was happening in India, we developed a global delivery model, which was the traditional way of working, where it was more command control, where you had at the client or the client side, you used to have a client manager, a big team. Most of the high-end work like architecture and analysis, design used to happen that side, and only basically development, testing kind of work used to come over with the offshore teams. Right? That's how it was. But now with the advent of agile practices, 2000, the agile manifesto and all that. So we see that we are adopting to the agile world, and at the same time, when you look at this is from the version one survey, and it is version one survey. So about 76% of the respondents in the 2000 when the survey report was released in 2014, but the survey happened in 2013, end of 2013. 3,000 organizations participated in the survey, which was conducted by version one. What came out was that when in the year 2012, about 35% of respondents have come back that they are using distributed agile for their work. But in 2013, it has almost doubled. So what does that show? It shows distributed teams, multiple geographies, multiple locations, and that kind of work has become a reality. So we have to now move towards that. And how do we adapt ourselves? So now this has become like more like the common story we have heard about from our childhood. This comes from Jain origins. So basically, I don't remember who, but so Mahavir or someone told this story about six. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. The origin is from Jain, then Buddhism, then many of the Vedanta stories. Then there is a poem, even European poem, has taken his team and has written a poem. That's what I've just shown there. The person, poet's name is John Gottfried. So this is widely popular. So what happens here? So six blind men and elephant. Everybody, what does this team tell about? This story talk about? Yeah. So we saw a live example. Yes, a few minutes back, right in our slides. So what happens is, so when I mean here you have six blind people trying to feel the elephant and feel the elephant and understand what it is, and then translate. So what would happen if you are looking at the person who is holding the trunk would feel it like it is more like a snake. The one who is touching the dust, he just based on his experience, okay, subjective experience. So when each one takes his subjective experience, whatever he understands from his reference point, and finally if that is put together, that's what we get. See, that's how when distributed teams are working, and if each of the team works independently, not actually interacting, so an elephant becomes like that. So, I mean, we saw that, right? So that's what it meant. So how do we overcome this? So that's what it is. So we saw if the teams are isolated, the top line shows the distributed teams working as separate units. They're not interacting with each other. They get what they need to do and just come out with their subjective understanding of what is required. If that happens, we saw what happens, right? The six blind men and elephant. That is going to be the output. But then, as distributed development and scaling of agile, now we use Scrum or Scrums. So where from each team there is a part of the Scrum member, like you have the Scrums talking to each other, understanding on a continuous basis of what each other team is doing, the obstacles and overcoming them. That is the next stage where you have Scrum or Scrums. But is that enough? So if you really look at Scrum, he's just having Scrum or Scrum. It's not. Right? So there has to be more interactions with the team. Just having a Scrum or Scrum doesn't solve the purpose of distribution. So there has to be more integration brought into the teams. So how do we achieve it? So what is the result? So now what we have is if we have teams separately, each one doing their way, we have a bowl of fruits. So we have to look at how do we make that into a tasty salad. So how do we mix them, the culture as we discussed in the morning, and how do we make it into a tasty salad? So how do we do that? What are the various aspects? So based on our learnings as a company and working with organizations, how to build integrated make salad from fruits. So these are, we talk about these in the DevOps scenario also. Talk about, if there are four transformations which bring about integrated teams. One is the culture angle, which we described it then in the morning. So working as a unified culture. Yes, other aspect is automation. Culture, automation, measurement, sharing, communication. So those are the four aspects in which distributed teams have to transform themselves to bring integration and better. Automation is technology automation. So we'll come to that. Basically, tools and technology. So culture, we saw the culture aspect in the morning. So here I take an analogy and an example to just say how, So when in colony of penguins, okay, when one penguin falls sick, what do the other penguins do? So in a colony of penguins, one penguin falls sick. What do the other penguins do? Care for it. Care for it. They don't care for it. Okay. Because the penguins, they peck on the sick penguin and kill it for the benefit of the other penguins, so that the other penguins don't get infected or things like that. But what do elephants do? So if one elephant falls sick in a herd of elephants, the elephants show a lot of care. they try to take the elephant along with them, or if they can't, and if the elephant is dying, the complete herd, doesn't go away. They just stay there even if it is dying. Till it dies. They don't move away.
So what is culture basically? That's what.
I'm just taking an another. So it might be, yeah. So
Might be good or bad. That's not the.
here, so just wanted to mention that from penguin culture, which is a limited kind of culture, so we have to move towards elephant culture. Okay, where we are supportive, each other. When morning somebody, I think was it Avinash, was talking about supporting teams and
Business environment. What actually we can move towards that culture? Business environment.
yeah, totally as a team. See, we have to move towards that, but definitely move away from the penguin culture.
That's I totally.
Maybe not totally as an elephant culture, but definitely move away from the penguin culture of pulling down people, not working as a team. Those have to be. How do we achieve that? In our experience, I'll take two ways in which with an example. For example, intra-team. Okay, so in our teams, what we have is we have it's a multifunctional team. We have architects. Okay? So as an experiment, we have architects who provide the whole architecture and the approach for development to the team. And the team develops based on the architectural approach given by the architect and development. So what sometimes we have observed is, I mean, at least in the Indian context, the technical architects themselves wouldn't directly come hands-on to the code and build the whole framework and give it to the team. They say that we are architects, we give approach. Okay, that kind of approach. Many a time the team, I mean, as we also saw in the morning, if the teams are mature, if they have a lot of experience, that doesn't become a limitation. But in teams where, in Indian services industry, we have the pyramid, and many of the Indian companies also measure the managers' performance based on the rookie ratio. How many newbies can be taken into the team? So that 70% rookie ratio. Such situations. Okay. So if the technical architect separates himself and says that no, I'm not directly getting to the stage of doing coding, but I'll give an approach. So we had a lot of such intra-team conflicts. Okay, but when so that is where an agile coach becomes important. So talking to the architect and making him understand why there is a need for the architect to take the lead and really show the team culture and help the teams to deliver made a lot of difference in the teams. Yeah. So that it's a team operational level agreements. Okay. So I'm talking about the intra team right now. So those kind of conflicts and forming a cohesive team is what helps further our and then effective reflection, retrospectives. We saw all that. Ongoing learning, training, sharing knowledge, hackathons, all those for interactive development. And interactive, in many of our Indian services organizations, when we work with customers, we find that there are multiple vendors. And the scenario is now, multiple vendors have become common. So when you have team A from one vendor, team B from another vendor, so we don't find that kinds of common goal and common approach. So there is always a competition. So how do we avoid that? So we are facing some situation like that, so which I will go into a little depth a little later. So if there is a good communication with the other vendor A and vendor B, and there is rotation for some time for the kind of work between the teams, so that helps a lot in building, breaking the bridges and so multiple vendor teams, overlap of forecasts, working relationships. rotation of team members. All this help in building those culture. So I'll go a little quicker here because we have covered that in the morning exam. Then comes the culture part is very well understood. So next comes automation. So everyone has heard about Sakichi Toyota, right? Toyota. So what did he do?
Toyota was spinning wheels. He automated the spinning wheels.
Yeah, so that is one, and really one thing that was actually even in the textile industry during 19th century, 67, 1930. So basically, the problem was when the power looms were running. So if there were when the power looms were running, if there was any uh, defective piece of cloth, so that is if one line goes wrong, has not desired, or if there is a defect, and if the loom continues to run, there used to be a lot of wastage. So basically, what used to be done was, so there used to be a manual person who inspects, the bale that is going in the thing. And if there is a defective this thing, they used to pull a string which used to stop the machine. Okay. So that was, I mean, if the person, I mean, manual, any kind of manual work or manual intervention is always prone to I mean, mistakes, right? So sometimes if the person misses out to pull the string and stop the machine, so it used to lead to a lot of waste. So, so Toyota actually found out an automated way of stopping the machine whenever there is a defect using a camera and a sensor. Okay, so that helped reduce a lot of waste. Okay, so the same thing applied to our software development is the tool automation or continuous integration. So one side is our culture, is our management, is our the teams working together and all that. The other side is the technical excellence part. Looking at the so uh, so when the teams develop something, running unit test automation, then we'll running automated smoke tests and integration tests, and continuous deployment. Now even when we can using Chef and other tools, we can even automate deployment. Even deployment has become like code. So automation also has a major factor in bringing teams together and ensuring that the work goes seamless. So second part being automation. The third one, I'm just taking one example of measurement. And most of you would be familiar with lightning bolt, that is signboard. So what is very special or unique about process printer? And he has broken his record, his own record many times. He was the fastest 100 meters sprinter. And how did he do that? How did he achieve that? How could he continuously improve? So, so what he used to do was he also used to look at what he really understood is while he's sprinting the 100 meter run. So he used to even measure the angle at the posture at which he runs and look at what posture gives him the maximum speed. Okay, so he just measured that some 100, I'm not giving you the exact number, but some 100, and if he runs with a speed of 105 degrees, so he could run with that. So he kept on improving. He kept measuring and kept on improving. So that is where he could continuously improve. So that is the thing. So measurements is also important for teams to continuously evaluate themselves. So some of the common metrics that we use in distributed, like team velocity, burn down, burn out, cycle time, and lead time. So many of us discussed that in the increment age. Some of us, when Scrum of Scrum, keep track of the increments and see that they are covered faster. So all of these measurements which we use also help us in government better. And then, last but not the least, communication is key for distributed teams to integrate and deliver quality products. Right? And we discussed that in the morning. So John very well put that. So we have, if we look at the communication spectrum, so the email and PPs and all that, they are asynchronous communication. All of them. So if we look at richer communication, face to face is the best kind of communication, which we all know. But next to that is using virtual environments. Like now we have video conference, we have teleconference. So using those high technology products, so it makes multiple teams work together well. Here is an example of 3 or 4 teams. We have an India team, we have a team in the UK, and a team in Poland. And John was pointing to me that there has to be interactive lines between each of them. So that being listed out. So here, as I was mentioning, so this is a vendor in India, and we have another vendor in Poland. Okay, so the customer is in the UK. Okay, and we have situations.
Is that what happens when your time's up?
Yeah.
So, on the next slide. So this is the scenario that I was talking about when we have multiple vendors. So we have, India team, is our team, and there's another vendor in Poland. So many times what happens is both the teams work on a common repository or a common code. But when it comes to the end of sprint, there is dependency of this team on that team's commit or commit to the thing. So there was a lot of conflicts between these two teams as to it was team A's responsibility. It was not committed rightly. So that broke the build. So on the 10th day of the sprint, so we cannot test the environment. The test environment is down because this team B checked in something and the whole thing. That kind of competition was there between teams. So one thing that has helped us is having it, even though it is from a different vendor team, to interact with the team, try to have closer communications with the team. So if there are any dependencies, have a discussion, provide those dependencies to the other vendor, and also have some kind of rotation among the teams. Okay. So in the qualifications and all that has helped us a lot in working as with close teams in a multi-vendor scenario. And as I was mentioning, we as a company have invested with our customer and with a video conferencing thing with HD TVs, Skype, use WebEx, high quality conference phone, all that, which has helped to a large extent. The teams feel as though they are sitting next to each other in these video conferences, and that have built close interactions and communications. So just summarizing in the interest of time. So working as distributed teams is not new to Indian IT industry. We have been doing that for decades. So now the only change is that in an agile world, we have to deliver faster. Quicker cycles and quicker deliveries is what is changed. Otherwise, the common aspects of culture, automation, measurement, and communication, working on those areas and building a cohesive culture is what helps in scaling up as for this. So that's my presentation. So thank you, and this is my email address and please an email address. And the same thing has been elaborated in an article, which was published in Scrum Alliance. So that is
It's enabled.
Yeah. So, thank you. Any questions?